And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Baseball Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host Kenneth Gruenfelder, and as always, it's great to have you guys on this Thursday morning. We got a lot to talk about on today's show, as we normally do. But before that, I just want to remind you guys to donate tips to the show. For tips or donations, go to streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Again, it's on the ticker on the bottom. And also, for bonus coverage materials that are not covered on this live broadcast, make sure to go to patreon.com and search up GSMC Sports Network for all bonus exclusive content that you will not get on this live broadcast. So, like I said, we have a lot to talk about on today's show. Starting off the show like we normally do, we'll go through the latest news and headlines around the league. In the second part of the show, we are going to talk about the Cubs losing another tough game to the Braves in Atlanta last night. And because of that, that has allowed the Marlins to tie the Cubs for that third wildcard spot. And if the season were to end today, the Marlins would have the tiebreaker over the Cubs. So we'll get into that in the next segment, and we'll go through some of the other scores in the National League as well. And then in the third segment, we are going to talk about the Astros taking 2 out of 3 from Seattle in Seattle last night. Mariners still on the outside looking in, and now they have to play Texas for 4 games, which is going to be tough. So we'll talk about that and some of the other scores as well regarding teams in the American League. We'll go over the Blue Jays losing another game to the Yankees last night, and so we'll get into that in the third part of the show. We'll mention it. I mean, a lot of this stuff we'll mention for a little bit in the beginning of the show. So that'll be the third part of the show, and then to conclude the show, we're going to talk about the games for tonight, the pitching matchups, and what I see happening there. So that's the rundown for today's show. So let's kind of get into the first part of the show, which is talking about the latest news and headlines around the league. So obviously some big things happened yesterday. So first off, Ronald Acuna, he secured MLB's first 40-70 season. He stands alone when it comes to that. 40-plus home runs, 70 stolen bases, and he's basically the National League MVP. He is. He's just like last year with Aaron Judge and his 62 home runs. Ronald Acuna has done something that's never been done before. So, and he's the MVP. I mean, it's you can make some arguments with some of the other players, obviously Matt Olson and Mookie Betts, but Ronald Acuna is the MVP. So he was able to get that done last night, and now he stands alone as the only player to ever do that. Will it happen again? With the new rules, it's definitely possible. So congrats to him. And but something funny that came out of that yesterday. So the Cubs, they on social media you could watch the. Obviously, if you're a Cubs fan and other ways of, watching the game, the Cubs broadcast was were not happy with how, when Ronald Acuna got the stolen base, I guess there was like a video tribute that was playing during the inning, so the game stopped, and the Cubs broadcasters were not too pleased about it. So if you want to go check that out, it's on Twitter. You could look it up on there, on YouTube. It's everywhere. Or if you have, MLB at bat and the subscription, you can rewatch the game. You can go find it. It's in extra innings. So so congrats to Ronald Acuna. But yeah, the Cubs broadcasters are not happy about it. I think also because losing yesterday and then blowing another lead again late in the game, and I was watching some of it. The Cubs had another miscue on the infield. I think it was Horner. He threw it over Dansby Swanson, and that was a throwing error in the game that allowed the Braves, I think, to tie it at that point. But we'll go through it. And then I think when Acuna was stealing a base, the catcher on the Cubs I don't even know whether he was throwing the ball. He just threw it into the outfield, like not even near second base. He just threw it into left field, basically. Yeah, so, it was not a good game for the Cubs. But, Yeah, so we'll get into that in the next segment. But yeah, like I said, the Cubs broadcaster's not happy about it, and it makes sense because right now the Cubs now have just lost, you know, the first 2 of 3 in Atlanta, and yeah, it's not looking good right now for the Cubs. Also, something to come out from yesterday, although the game was postponed and they're going to resume it today. I did talk about Miguel Cabrera and how it was his last homestand at Comerica Park, and I said, go and try to hit a home run and give the fans something, one last thing to cheer about. And he actually did end up hitting a home run yesterday, his 511th of his career, to tie Mel Ott on the all-time home run list. So actually, let's see where that puts him now on the all-time home runs list. Let's see if we can just pull that up. So he's at 511. So he's tied for 25th with Mel Ott on the all-time home runs list. So, if he can hit maybe one more this weekend, that would put him, ahead of him. So we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, that was a good start for Miggy in his final homestand. So we'll see. Like I said, the game has to be resumed. It was suspended. Right now it's 4-0 Tigers in the top of the 5th against the Royals. So, and then the next game is to be determined for whenever that's going to play. So, but yeah, another milestone for him. Also, another couple things regarding the American League. So the Mariners and the Astros, the bench is cleared in that game. Hector Neris on the Astros struck out Julio Rodriguez, and after that happened, he started walking towards him and screaming at him, and yeah, so it got nasty there. Allegedly, he was cursing at him. So yeah, it got ugly there, and the Astros did end up winning the game, but yeah, there was no fighting or anything. Really, just the bench is cleared. But yeah, so I mean, these two teams don't really like each other. Astros, again, that was a big series win for them. Mariners, I mean, these 4 games against Texas are very important, and if they're going to want to have any shot, they got to win these games. But we'll have to wait and see on that. Obviously, that's a series definitely to keep an eye on. Also, Garrett Cole last night pitched a complete game shutout, the second of this season. He did it earlier in the year against the Twins, but yeah, he was awesome yesterday. And I didn't realize until, well, obviously when I tried to turn on the game, that it was on Prime, and I was like, of course it's on Prime. So I ended up pulling it up on my phone. I did have MLB Network on last night, so they were, jumping in and out of games. So they had the Blue Jays broadcast on, so I watched it like that for a bit. But then I pulled it up on Prime because, yeah, Cole ended up going the distance. And Aaron Judge hit 2 more home runs last night, so that brought him to 37 home runs on the season. And again, Aaron Judge doesn't get hurt. I mean, he probably makes it to 60 home runs again. So, but yeah, the Blue Jays lose another tough game, and that's why, and they mentioned it on the Yankees broadcast last night, that it was really important that they, they took the first game because they were going to be going up against Garrett Cole, and Garrett Cole just completely shut them down. And yeah, so Garrett Cole basically, and we'll touch upon it again when we go over the whole box score. But to just go to Garrett Cole's final numbers on the season, so he finishes with 15 wins on the season. He finishes with a sub-3 ERA. He's now in the 2.63 ERA, 209 innings pitched, 222 strikeouts, and a .98 WHIP. And listen, in a season where, a lot of things went wrong for the Yankees, at least Garrett Cole was, a bright spot. And he took the ball every 5th day, and he's reliable. And it's just unfortunate that this year was pretty much a waste. Another thing with the Yankees, so the I guess Hal Steinbrenner, he hired like an independent company to do like an audit to see what went wrong for the Yankees, to do like an in-depth analysis of what went wrong. Tongue twister there. So people are gonna maybe lose their jobs, maybe specifically maybe in the analytics department, because there was a lot of things that went wrong with the Yankees, and it seems like Hal Steinbrenner is very upset with how the season went. And you go back to, he made an appearance on the Michael Kay show, and he, talked about how he was confused as to why Yankee fans were upset with, how the season's been going, when at that point it was, in June. And then since that appearance, the season unraveled. And I think now he understands why Yankee fans were very upset at that time. So, I mean, we're just going to have to see how that goes. You're hoping that major changes are made. I think if Aaron Boone ends up getting fired and losing his job, I don't think that's enough. And especially because this season, I really don't think it's his fault. And I think a lot of Yankee fans are in lockstep with that. But you're going to have, obviously, the base of fans that think otherwise and think he's a terrible manager and he needs to be gone. But I think at this point in time, and obviously I came to the realization of that at some point, that there's a lot more behind-the-scenes stuff that those people need to be held more accountable as opposed to Aaron Boone. But, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But, yeah, Gerrit Cole finishes off the year strong, basically solidifying himself as the American League Cy Young. I mean, it's a wrap. After last night, it is definitely a wrap. And especially because, listen, the Blue Jays, I mean, they just did not do anything against him the last these two times that they faced him, over the course of the last week. And, Gerrit Cole delivered. I mean, he knew what was on the line, and he pitched well. And, obviously yesterday it was because of him and Aaron Judge as to why the Yankees won. Judge hitting 2 more home runs. And it really just makes you wonder, what happens if Judge doesn't bang into that wall against the Dodgers? Does he hit 62 home runs again? I think he comes close. He definitely hits over 50. But we'll never know. We'll never know. But, so I think that's pretty much it with all the major headlines from yesterday, in case I'm missing any. Because I usually just look at, MLB and see if, obviously what's trending. I mean, we did talk about the Cubs and the Marlins being tied. We'll get into that in the next segment. But yeah, I mean, obviously we're going to get into basically all the other things. I guess also Francisco Lindor hit 3 home runs in the doubleheader yesterday against the Marlins. So that was good for him, obviously. But yeah, also Terry Francona got a final standing ovation before he retires. Right now, being the Guardians manager, obviously that was his last home game with the Guardians. So yeah. So again, it's sad to see him go. Guardians go to Detroit. Obviously all those years with the Red Sox, being part of that team that came back down 0-3 to beat the Yankees in 2004. But yeah, he was very touched by it. And he's going to be missed. So, but that's pretty much it when it comes to the headlines. So with that, we are going to take our first break of the show. And then when we come back, we are going to talk about, obviously, the third wild card spot in the National League. We'll go through the scores. We'll talk about the Marlins games with the Mets, and obviously the Cubs losing another tough game to the Braves in Atlanta. So stick around, and we will be right back here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.